Hi, my name is Laura Bennett, and I'm here to share something that completely changed my life. On an ordinary morning in April 2023, I went out for a jog, just like I'd done countless times before. The air was cool, the streets were quiet, and everything felt still. I remember checking my watch, 5:12 a.m., as I approached the intersection near my neighborhood. Then it happened. I didn't hear or see the car coming. A driver, distracted by their phone, struck me as I crossed the street. I don't remember the impact itself, just a sudden darkness, as if the world had been turned off. For 12 minutes, I was clinically dead. No heartbeat, no breath, nothing. But what I experienced in those 12 minutes was far from nothingness. Instead, I found myself in a place more real and profound than anything I've ever known. That moment marked the start of something I never imagined, being taken beyond this world, shown extraordinary truths, and coming back with a message that I feel compelled to share. When I was hit by that car, I expected nothingness, a complete blackout, silence, maybe the end of everything. But instead, something incredible happened. The first thing I remember was the light. It wasn't like any light I'd ever seen before. It wasn't harsh or blinding. It was alive, warm, and completely enveloped me. It didn't just light up my surroundings. It seemed to fill me from the inside out. I felt lighter, as if every worry, every fear, and every ounce of pain I'd ever carried just disappeared. Then came the peace. It's almost impossible to describe, a peace so deep that I didn't even realize how heavy life had been until it was gone. In that moment, it felt like I had come home, like this was where I truly belonged all along. There was no sense of time, no rush, just pure, overwhelming calm. As I tried to take in this new reality, I saw someone stepping toward me. At first, I didn't understand, but then I realized it was my dad who had passed away when I was just a teenager. He looked so healthy, vibrant, and full of life, like he was in the prime of his years. But there was something more, something heavenly about him, like he was glowing from within. He smiled at me with such warmth and love, just like I remembered. "Laura," he said, his voice exactly as I remembered, but filled with a new kind of gentleness. "You don't need to be afraid. He's waiting for you." I didn't understand what he meant at the time, but I knew I could trust him. He reached out and touched my hand, and in that instant, I felt a connection so deep, it answered every question I'd ever wanted to ask him. After my dad took my hand, everything around me changed. The light that had surrounded me grew brighter, warmer even, and I felt this incredible pull, like I was being gently guided somewhere. And then I saw him. Standing there right in front of me was Jesus. And let me tell you, no words I use will ever do justice to what it was like to be in his presence. He wasn't like the paintings or the depictions we've all seen. He was so much more, fully human, yet completely divine. His presence was overwhelming, but not in a way that frightened me. It was the kind of overwhelming that humbles you to your core. The first thing I noticed was his eyes. They were unlike anything I've ever seen, filled with compassion, wisdom, and love, but also with a depth that made me feel completely known. It wasn't just like he was looking at me. It felt like he was seeing every part of me, every choice I'd ever made, every hurt, every doubt, every joy. And yet, there was no judgment in his gaze, only this incredible, unconditional love that I'd never felt before. I fell to my knees, not because I was afraid, but because being in his presence was so humbling. It felt like the only natural response. Then he reached out and placed his hand on my shoulder. The moment he touched me, it was like every burden I'd ever carried vanished. I felt peace, love, and strength all at once. "Laura," he said, and his voice was both gentle and commanding, like it carried the weight of the universe, yet still spoke directly to me. You have been chosen for a purpose. There is something you must see, something my people need to know before I return. At first, I didn't understand. I couldn't imagine why he would choose me. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, doubted things, and struggled just like anyone else. But he seemed to see past all of that, as if none of it mattered in the face of what he was asking me to do. Laura, he continued, the world is entering a time unlike any it has known. There are events that will unfold, and my people must be prepared. He began to show me visions, 3 events that would happen in 2025. Each one was vivid, like I was there experiencing them firsthand, and each one carried a message, a warning, and a call to action. The first vision was what he called the Great Distraction. I saw people glued to their devices, phones, screens, anything that kept them busy and disconnected from what truly mattered. Families sat in the same room but didn't speak. Friends were more concerned with their social media likes than with each other. Even believers were caught up in the noise, forgetting their faith and focusing on temporary things. This is how the enemy works, Jesus said. He keeps them distracted, focused on the temporary, so they forget the eternal. Tell my people to wake up, to refocus their hearts and minds on me. The second vision was even more unsettling. He called it the Great Deception. I saw strange lights in the sky and beings of incredible beauty and charisma speaking to humanity. They promised peace, unity, and enlightenment, but their words were filled with lies. Even strong believers were being drawn in, seduced by their promises. These are not of me, Jesus said. They will mix truth with lies, leading many astray. Tell my people to stay rooted in my word, for it is the only foundation that cannot be shaken. The third vision was breathtaking and filled with hope. It was the Great Return. The sky opened, and there he was, coming in glory with legions of angels. The whole world stopped. Every knee bowed, and every tongue confessed that he is Lord. Some did so in awe and worship, while others did so in terror and regret. This is what awaits, he told me. Tell them I am coming soon. Tell them to be ready, for no one knows the day or the hour. When the visions ended, I was overwhelmed. It felt like I had been shown the weight of the world, but his presence reminded me I wasn't alone. You've seen what is to come, Laura, he said. But remember this, I am always with you, and I am always with my people. My love is unchanging, and my promises are unbreakable. Before I could respond, he placed his hand over my heart, and I felt a rush of love so profound it brought tears to my eyes. Then he told me it was time to go back, that my work wasn't finished. Tell my people that I see their struggles, their fears, and their failures. I am not distant from their pain. I am the God who heals, who restores, who makes all things new. And with that, I was back, alive, in my body, and forever changed. When Jesus showed me the first vision, I wasn't prepared for how clear and vivid it would be. It was like I was right there, in the middle of it, seeing the world as it will be in 2025. And what I saw broke my heart. I saw people everywhere, completely absorbed by technology. It wasn't just phones or computers. It was all kinds of screens and devices, things I couldn't even recognize. People were glued to them, their faces illuminated by artificial light, their minds trapped in some digital world. Families sat together in their living rooms, but no one spoke to each other. Instead, everyone was staring at their screens, scrolling, tapping, or watching something. It wasn't just families. Friends sat at coffee shops, but instead of talking, they were taking pictures of their food or checking their notifications. Couples walked side by side, but didn't even glance at each other. their attention completely on their devices. Even children were affected. I saw kids sitting alone with tablets in their hands, missing out on play, laughter, and the wonder of the world around them. The saddest part was the believers. People who had once been passionate about their faith were now caught up in the same distractions. They scrolled through endless streams of information, watched videos, and debated trivial things online. Their Bibles sat untouched, their prayers replaced with hurried thoughts, and their connection to God felt distant. It was like their hearts were being pulled away, one notification at a time. Jesus turned to me, and I'll never forget the look in his eyes. It was a mix of sadness and urgency, like he could see how this was pulling people away from what really mattered. "Laura," he said, "this is the enemy's work. He doesn't need to destroy them outright. He just needs to keep them distracted. The more they focus on the temporary, the more they forget the eternal." He showed me how subtle it all was. It wasn't evil in an obvious way. It was sneaky. The distractions seemed harmless at first. A funny video, a quick text, a moment on social media. But over time, they added up. People were spending hours every day chasing things that didn't matter, while their relationships, their faith, and their purpose faded into the background. And the consequences were devastating. Families were drifting apart, friendships were becoming shallow, and people felt lonelier than ever despite being connected all the time. I could feel the emptiness in their lives, the longing for something real, something meaningful. But instead of turning to God or each other, they kept turning back to their screens, hoping for something that would never satisfy. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Tell them to wake up. Remind them that their time is precious, that they were made for connection, with me and with each other. They need to refocus their hearts and minds, or they'll lose sight of what truly matters." When the vision ended, I was left with a deep sense of urgency. This isn't just about technology, it's about what we allow to take over our hearts and minds. Jesus wasn't condemning technology itself, but he was warning us about letting it consume us, keeping us distracted from him, from our loved ones, and from the life we were created to live. The second vision Jesus showed me was both mesmerizing and deeply unsettling. It began with a scene that felt almost magical, lights in the sky, so beautiful and captivating that they took my breath away. People were looking up in wonder, gathering in awe as these incredible displays unfolded above them. It was like the entire world had stopped to marvel at something extraordinary. Then I saw figures stepping forward, charismatic, radiant beings who seemed almost otherworldly. They spoke with such confidence and charm, their words flowing like honey. They talked about peace, unity, and enlightenment, promising a new era where humanity could rise above its struggles and pain. Their message was so enticing, so full of hope that people couldn't help but listen. But something wasn't right. As I watched, I felt a deep unease growing inside me. Their words were laced with a subtle, almost invisible distortion. They mixed bits of truth with lies, weaving them together so seamlessly that even the strongest believers were drawn in. People who had been steadfast in their faith began to doubt, captivated by these promises that sounded too good to be true. Jesus stood beside me, his presence grounding me in the midst of the chaos. He said, "Laura, these are not of me. They come in my name, but their purpose is to deceive. They will twist my truth, and many will follow them." He showed me how these figures used humanity's longing for peace and answers to lure them away from God. They exploited people's fears and hopes, presenting themselves as saviors while leading them further from the only true Savior. The deception wasn't obvious, it was subtle, and that made it even more dangerous. "Tell my people to stay rooted in my word," Jesus said, his voice firm yet filled with love. Only my truth can withstand the lies. If they stray from it, they will be lost in the confusion. The vision left me shaken, but also resolute. Jesus was clear. The only way to discern truth from deception is by staying grounded in His Word. These figures and phenomena may appear dazzling and persuasive, but their promises are empty. Only God's truth can guide us through what's to come. The final vision Jesus showed me was unlike anything I could have imagined. It was so powerful, so overwhelming, that even now I struggle to find the right words to describe it. It began with the sky, a clear, vast expanse that suddenly started to change. It wasn't like a storm or anything earthly. The heavens seemed to ripple, as if the very fabric of reality was being pulled apart. And then it happened. The sky split open, revealing a brilliance so intense, so glorious, that it felt like the world itself had to pause. Jesus appeared, radiant and majestic, surrounded by countless angels. His presence filled everything, and the light that came from Him was more than just light. It was love, power, and truth all at once. Every part of me felt it, and I knew without a doubt, this was the moment the world had been waiting for. All around the world, people stopped in their tracks. Some fell to their knees immediately, their faces filled with awe and joy. They were weeping, not out of fear, but out of pure love and reverence. These were the ones who had been waiting for Him, who had lived their lives in faith. Their hearts seemed to overflow with a joy so profound that it was almost too much to bear. But there were others, too, people who reacted very differently. Their faces were pale with terror, their bodies trembling. They tried to hide, but there was nowhere to go. It was as if they suddenly realized the truth, but it was too late. Their regret and fear were written all over them. Jesus turned to me and said, "Every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess that I am Lord. Some will do so with joy, and others with fear. But the truth cannot be denied. Tell my people to be ready, for no one knows the day or the hour." The vision ended, but the weight of it stayed with me. Jesus is coming back, and when He does, the entire world will know. He won't come quietly or in secret. His return will be undeniable. This is why we must live with purpose and readiness, keeping our hearts aligned with Him. When that day comes, I want to be among those who bow in joy, not in fear. The moment I returned to my body was nothing short of a miracle. 1 second, I was surrounded by light and the presence of Jesus, and the next, I felt a jolt, like being pulled through a narrow tunnel at incredible speed. Suddenly, I was back, gasping for air as my chest burned with an intensity I can't describe. My eyes fluttered open, and I saw paramedics hovering over me, their faces a mix of shock and relief. "She's back," one of them said, his voice trembling with emotion. I could barely move, and every part of my body ached. But the tears streaming down my face weren't from pain. They were from gratitude for being alive and for what I had just experienced. In the days that followed, I learned just how miraculous my survival was. By all accounts, I should not have made it. Clinically dead for 12 minutes, my heart had stopped, and yet here I was, awake, aware, and recovering faster than anyone expected. The doctors were baffled. They called my case unexplainable, but I knew the truth. God had given me a second chance, and with it came an undeniable purpose. The visions I had seen, the words Jesus spoke to me, they weren't just for me. They were a message for the world, a call to prepare for what's coming. As I lay in my hospital bed, replaying everything I'd witnessed, I felt an unshakable conviction. I couldn't keep this to myself, no matter how difficult or unbelievable it might seem. I'll admit, it hasn't been easy. How do you explain something so profound, so otherworldly, to people who might doubt or even mock you? But every time I think about holding back, I hear Jesus' words echoing in my heart. Tell them I am coming soon. My life will never be the same. I've been given a responsibility, a sacred duty to share these visions and to urge others to turn back to God. This isn't just a story of survival. It's a message of hope, warning, and love. And I won't stop sharing it until everyone who's willing to listen hears it. When I came back to life, I knew I couldn't just move on as if nothing had happened. What I experienced wasn't meant to stay with me. It was a call to action, a message I had to share. Jesus didn't just show me what's coming. He gave me a mission, and it's one I take seriously with every fiber of my being. The message is simple but urgent. We need to wake up. We're living in a world consumed by distractions, our phones, our schedules, and the endless noise that keeps us from connecting with what truly matters. Jesus showed me how these distractions aren't just harmless. They're tools the enemy uses to pull us away from God. It's time to refocus on what's eternal, not what's temporary. But it doesn't stop there. The deception coming our way will be so convincing, so enticing, that even strong believers will struggle. Jesus made it clear, the only way to stand firm is to stay rooted in His Word. The Bible isn't just a book, it's a lifeline, a foundation that can't be shaken, no matter what lies we're confronted with. We have to rely on it, especially in the days ahead. Most importantly, we need to prepare for His return. Jesus is coming back, and when He does, the world will never be the same. But He doesn't want us to wait in fear or uncertainty. He wants us to live with purpose, to love deeply, to hold on to our faith even when it's hard. He wants us to be ready, not just for the challenges, but for the incredible joy that comes with being in His presence. I know some people will doubt me or dismiss what I'm saying, and that's okay. I'm not here to convince everyone. I'm here to speak to those who have ears to hear. If even one person takes this message to heart and turns back to God, it will all be worth it. So this is my call to you. Don't wait. Don't let the distractions or deceptions of this world pull you away. Open your heart to God, stand firm in your faith, and prepare for the day when Jesus returns. It's closer than we think, and the time to act is now.